The story begins a day ago when a lottery authority announces the names of the winners, and it seems that the protagonist of the story ends up winning the biggest jackpot selected in the lottery. As soon as he gets called into the main room excited about his prizes, he feels like he is in a mysterious room, and he notices that the first winner of the lottery is now able to withdraw his special prize, and he gets sent to somewhere as he vanishes. Then, when he begins questioning the receptionist about the first winner going away all of a sudden, she claims that he was summoned into another world, and the whole thing begins feeling rather destructive for him. She claims that he is about to have a similar prize, but he will be able to select his skills with the machine in front of him, and the only difference between the first winner is that he will be able to bring only one skill which he can continue to roll until the most desired ones come out. Despite feeling that it must be some kind of weird joke, his first rolling skill comes out to be Fire Breath, and he finds out that she is not kidding at all as he is able to do so. But as he is able to roll out once again, he keeps looking into Sage, Berserker, and many more ahead of him, and the receptionist grows tired of explaining the traits ahead of him. Then, in the final moment of the roll, he finds out that he is eligible to take the rainbow color skill and thinks of going with that, and even the receptionist is surprised to see something like this in front of him. The receptionist claims that he will be able to return back to the real world anytime he wants, but he will never be able to go back, so he will have to make a concrete decision. As he agrees, the woman ends up transferring himself into a whole new world, and as he opens his eyes, he sees dragons flying above his head. The amazed protagonist thinks that he might have been successful to transfer himself in a whole new world, and just when he begins to wonder when he will be able to start exploring this new world, he notices that a huge bull is trying to rush at him anytime soon with the target of vanquishing him out of the world. Just when he notices the mountain bull interested in attacking him, he charges against the bull, and the protagonist keeps wondering what the creature must be in reality, but thinks that he can surely try against it with the skill he was able to get back in the time. As he begins concentrating on his powers, he feels like his powers must be overflowing inside of him, and just when the monster closes into him, he throws the heaviest punch possible that was made by him. Just as the monster begins to fly away in another direction, it ends up colliding on the ground in the end, and the protagonist feels like he must have gotten a real and amazing skill this time. At the same time, he begins to hear that someone might be screaming into the distance, and at that place, some adventurers are fighting against some bulls right there. Just when the adventurers keep on dying on the ground because of the attack made by the bulls, the protagonist rushes in that place to handle the monsters on behalf of them while introducing himself at the same time. He keeps on playing with the bulls as if he is playing with some kind of tennis ball, and this whole time they keep on staring at him as if they are in a wet dream where the hero is playing with his toys. When he finally lays the final attack on the monster, the adventurers are about to lose their shit after seeing him in action, and the protagonist feels like he has done what he had to do as only the corpses of the monsters are found on the ground. One of the adventurers introduces himself as Fortes, the Knight of the Mercury Kingdom, adding that they must have been already dead if they weren't helped by him, and the protagonist thinks that he did what he had to do as he already heard of them screaming. Then, as the man looks behind for the princess whom they were trying to protect this whole time, a beautiful elven lady comes in front of him to hold his hands, thanking him for his gratitude as looks like the strongest. Just when she thinks that he must be kind of humble for defeating the monsters for them, the protagonist keeps on wondering who the woman must be, as he is probably the most beautiful woman he has ever seen in his whole life. Then the knight comes in to remind her that they have managed to prepare the whole thing for her, and she thanks him by laying a fan in front of him. The princess claims that she is on her way to do business, so she wants to have it as a token of appreciation and invites him so he can meet her anytime he wants, as she will be letting everyone know about his presence, hoping that she will be able to meet him once again in near future. When she finally gets on the carriage, all he has are the monster corpses in front of him, which makes him wonder what he is about to do with them, as if he has nothing to do in front of him anymore. After a while, a carriage and some men come in the protagonist's direction, and the leader of the group thinks that he might be dreaming for seeing something in front of him like that, as he is seeing a mountain bull ahead of him. When the protagonist asks for the man's name as the mountain bull is lying down on the ground, the man claims that his name is Salamas, and he is a manager of a company as he came into the town with the goal of hunting mountain bulls with some of the adventurers. When the protagonist claims that he hunted the mountain bull on his own, Salamas thinks that it must be quite rare and valuable for him to hunt something like that all alone without any kind of help, as it is said that it takes about 10 adventurers at the same time to hunt a mountain bull, so he must be quite strong. Salamas asks if he is about to carry the bull to the town, and assumes that the protagonist will leave it on his behalf if he wants to, as he is about to give him a discount for a silver coin per bull. But even before he is about to say something, the protagonist starts carrying the bull on his back, and they straight up get into business after returning back to the villa. When the protagonist is done selling the bull to him, Salamas presents a huge pack of coins in front of him and claims that the bulls are quite rare because of the meat and the materials. Then when the protagonist begins asking him about the paper-like thing related to the lottery, Salamas claims that he cannot see anything, and the protagonist thinks of confirming later. Soon enough, a half-beast maid comes in to present them with snacks and tea, and the protagonist gets so mesmerized at her that he begins to stare at her as much as he can do. After seeing her body, he thinks that it would have been great if he could pet someone like her while unlocking the hand fan on his hand. The protagonist gets shocked after seeing the magic in front of him that occurred because of the magic, which feels rather amusing to the protagonist, and Salamas thinks that he might have seen this fan before in his life. After a while, Salamas thinks that he must be the one who received Her Highness's trust, as he is supposed to be the strongest, and keeps kneeling down in front of him, begging the company to serve him. Then the protagonist thinks that it might be his opportunity to ask for his prizes from the man, and begins asking for a house to stay in, and also the half-beast maid whom he found inside the palace. He is unable to believe that he would have been unable to buy a house like that in his whole life, and when the half-beast maid claims that he could have had any made for him, the protagonist thinks that she will be the perfect one for him. When the protagonist introduces himself as Yuuki Kakeru to the maid, she claims that her name is Miyu Mai Mayu, while making an erotic face, and they both continue to head inside of the mansion together. Just when he makes up his mind to stay in the world, he begins to wonder how many people he will end up meeting in this world, and Miyu asks her what she should do right now, which the protagonist thinks will be a great moment to pet her, and she is unable to fathom his requests. Just after getting back inside of the house, he keeps on petting her every way possible, even by undressing some of her clothes, and asks if she will be able to call her master from now on. Just when she repeats her introduction once again, he asks her to go and turn her back around him cutely on the same spot, which kind of surprises her. The moment she begins to show off her body, he keeps on getting provoked by the whole scenario, and he thinks that he didn't get the chance to meet a real maid in his whole life. The more she poses in front of him, the more he keeps asking for it, recalling her to be some kind of beauty. Just when she is mesmerized by her perverted acts, he helps her to get on the bed while she carries the seductive reactions on her face, which keeps on making him feel like he needs more of it. Later, he can be seen thinking about what is going on in his life, as he only came in the new world yesterday, and it brought him a lot of pleasant things, as he now has a mansion and a lovely maid, which is the best thing he can ask for in his life. After meeting with her once again, the protagonist claims that he wanted to pet her just the moment he met him back in there, and they continue to wander around the large mansion, not knowing that they would have something so bigger to live together. After hanging around the garden for a while, he claims that he is about to entrust the whole mansion to her from now on, and she wonders if it is fine for someone like her to handle everything on her own. Then when he asks if she doesn't want to work for him like that, she thinks that she wants to and gets more excited after talking to him, as he claims that he wants to get ready for his bath. While taking his bath, he keeps on wondering that his skill must be amazing, which lets him do a lot of things whenever he wants to do, and when Miyu comes in to talk to him, he claims that she cannot wear her clothes anymore and makes her undress only to wear towels to wash his back. Then when she begins the washing treatment, he feels like she must be larger than what he thought originally, and thinks that she must be the ideal type that he likes to be with him. Just when he is about to hold her hair from the bathtub, he ends up finding out that the whole tub is freezing, and someone is laughing at the floor above him. Then the maid reminds him that the mansion is supposed to be haunted and keeps on screaming, and the idea of getting cheap gets the best of him, which makes him regret it. But the man thought that it wouldn't be a problem for the protagonist to handle, and the protagonist begins to carry Miyu to handle some ghosts as soon as he can. As they begin to walk together, the protagonist claims that she will be fine as he is there to protect her as much as he can. When they finally enter the hallway, some ice spears continue to chase them down at once, and the protagonist covers Miyu to protect her from there. In the back of the house, some kind of ghost begins to attack the protagonist and Miyu at the same time, and he is unable to fathom that some ghost can even attack them, and she begins to embrace him while he keeps protecting her from the danger. Just after feeling that she might have grasped him, he keeps on rushing into another part of the house to keep protecting her. He begins to notice that the ice that is attacking them is coming from various directions, and he feels like the ghost might not want to go somewhere, which is a secret room inside of the mansion. As he rushes inside of the room while carrying Miyu, he gets the sight of the ghost attacking them, but he ends up dropping the maid in the middle, which begins carrying a heavy risk for her. Just when he goes on to protect her from the attack, the ice particles continue to hit him, and when she feels like he might be dead in no time, the protagonist reveals that he is not about to die that soon and keeps on rushing to fight against the ghost head, on which brings a big smile on her face. The protagonist keeps rushing at the ghost while punching at lightning speed, and the moment he clashes against the ghost with his punch, he notices that he has received some kind of ticket for him to have. Even before he's about to understand the situation, Miyu embraces him from afar, saying that she is not really afraid anymore as he is amazing with his skills. Both of them end up embracing each other in the end, and as he begins carrying her on a whim, both of them find each other on the bed, which starts getting deeper from there. After throwing her on the bed, he begins his treatment on her, which is to give her the best pleasure that he can achieve, and as it will be her first time to have someone in her, she requests him to be gentle with her. They continue to spend the whole night doing you-know-what, and the protagonist promises that he will continue to protect her forever. As she falls asleep on the bed, the protagonist thinks of the lottery ticket and reminds himself of the thing that the receptionist told him about having a way to return to his own world, and the whole way lights up ahead of him. The protagonist somehow manages to get into the lottery room once again, and the same woman welcomes him once again. It seems that the reason he is there is because he has his hands on a lottery ticket. As she claims that the skills are not the only prize that he is able to get out of her, she shows her a whole leaderboard of stuff, which feels like he is in a real Isekai'd world right now. She even shows a 50% off card in front of him, and even a warp feather which he will be using whenever he is hurt in the new world. Then, after hearing everything, he claims that he will come back once he has a lot of tickets, and he realizes that he needs to fix his mind to continue to collect as many more lottery tickets as possible from now on. Then the next morning, both his maid and he begin eating in an inn to eat the mountain cattle to check out the taste of them. The unbearable juice of the meat even makes Miyu cry, and when he asks her about it, she claims that she is being taken care of even though she is a slave who is used by people, and thanks the protagonist for making it happen. After some time, when the waitress comes in, she asks them about the taste of the mountain cattle, as she thinks that some strong adventurer hunted the bulls for them to cook and serve in front of them. Miyu realizes that she is talking about her master, and when the protagonist places the silver coin as the payment for the food, she claims that he can continue to bring a small amount of money if possible, as there has been a shortage of copper in their whole city, so they have barely any amount of change to give him the rest of his payment. Soon enough, someone in his head claims that it is quite risky to collect more copper coins, which makes him wonder who must be speaking in his head, assuming that it must be related to his recently achieved skills. As the voice begins to make out more sentences inside of his head, he thinks that he needs to find out the secret behind the formulation and starts running from the inn while instructing Miyu that she should continue to follow him. After running for a while being directed by the voice, he comes in front of a castle and the voice claims that his enemies are hiding inside of it. The voice lets him know that the people are melting and selling copper coins, which is some kind of organization, and when he begins asking her about someone who will help him out with the criminals, Miyu begins to stutter before she is even about to speak. Soon enough, a guy named Kefka Olmaso comes in to ask them about their intentions along with his knights, and Miyu tries her best to manage the situation, adding that they are no one suspicious doing suspicious activities. Then, when the protagonist claims that there are criminals in the building doing illegal activities, the man claims that it must be a real problem, and with the help of Miyu, the protagonist thinks that Kefka will be able to help them out in this situation. When the protagonist shows the fan given by the princess to state that he is no one suspicious in this case, Kefka instructs his men to arrest him, and the knights begin to handle both Miyu and the protagonist by acting roughly with them. While haggling with the group, Kefka reveals that he is now working with the criminals for a while to make some profit, and claims that they are about to resent this whole thing for acting out like this. Just when the protagonist realizes that he is a criminal, he begins using his ability to get out of the chokehold made by the knight to hold the man's face to push him inside of the facility of the industrial building. As the protagonist holds Miyu, he claims that arresting the authority will be a great option for him in this case, while the man instructs the knights to finish him off as he is a risk to all of his plannings right now. The next wave begins with him realizing that the knights are attacking the protagonist and Miyu at the same time, and he asks for her to be a good girl while they are together. Just when the knights throw weapons at him, they think that the protagonist must have been faking his composure right there with the maid, and he starts attacking the men by wrapping his hands around the weapons at once to throw them back on the knights almost instantly. None of the knights are able to realize what is happening in front of him, and the moment they go on to attack him, the protagonist keeps smashing them again and again to make them realize that they have made some kind of mistake. He keeps rolling all of the guys within his reach to use them as some kind of roller to fight back at the others at the same time. The fight continues with the protagonist throwing multiple punches at the guys which keep on smashing everyone, and the knights feel like he must be some kind of monster who cannot be fought by anyone. But Kefka keeps on instructing them to fight against him, even though they continue to run away from the protagonist. After handling the rest of the knights, the protagonist realizes that he must be the only one standing in his way who will be his next target. When the man decides to fight back by using his magic skills, the protagonist throws a heavy wave of magic attack at the man. The man is unable to fathom that the protagonist was able to throw away his attack, and Miyu is glad that he was able to survive the attack made by their opponent. The protagonist feels some kind of superior powers in his grasp, and thinks that he might be able to put that to use. So he formalizes his powers to get the biggest throw against the man to complete it with inevitable punches. He thinks that he is finally able to use ice magic against his guinea pig and instantly freezes everything that gets in his way from there. The ice magic begins to reach deeper into the core of the man, and he keeps on begging for his forgiveness, which finally ends even inside the mansion. While throwing his biggest spheres at the enemy, the protagonist grasps the ticket in his hand, and he realizes that he will be able to get as many tickets as possible if he continues to beat his enemies. But the moment he looks at the mansion, he notices that the whole mansion is now crystallized, meaning that he might have overdone himself, realizing that no matter where he is, there will always be someone who will continue to commit crimes against someone. But as the plot continues to thicken in front of him, he feels like he is supposed to get excited, and the event keeps spreading in the whole kingdom as he feels like her reunion is soon about to happen with him. Then a few days later, the protagonist's actions begin calling for an uproar in the whole town, as the mansion can be seen riddled with magic, as it soon became a public incident for happening out in public. When he meets Princess Helene, he rushes out to her asking what she is doing in this place, and she looks rather glad to see him face to face once again. Soon enough, her sister comes in to ask her if he is the man whom Helene has been talking about for a while, and she instantly confirms her identity. Helene also introduces her sister Iris, and the protagonist realizes that both of them look quite similar to each other because of their blood relations. Then when one of the knights calls him out so he behaves accordingly, Iris claims that it is fine since she is the one who called him to listen to him, whatever he has seen in this timeline. After talking to both of the sisters, he realizes that this has been happening for a while, as the situation always relates to copper coins, and he thinks to himself that there must be someone involved in this whole thing other than Kefka, so there must be a huge organization that is working in the shadows. The protagonist thinks that he can find a solution to this situation, and he thinks that they can use the idea of printing money to make the public feel like they can use a new currency to solve their problem. Even Iris thinks that he might be thinking accordingly, as they are in need of something like that, and hopes that the idea will remain for eternity for them, as nobody would be able to fabricate it, which will be worthwhile in this case till the end. Even though the knight accompanying them thinks that it must be destroying the idea of the royal crest, as the market will lead to the fall of the royal authority, Iris thinks that the idea is fine, and it will work as the kingdom will be fully stabilized once again. It is because the nation's transactions will be easy from now on, as they will even be able to utilize the cost of one sheet of paper will become 1,000 copper coins, which will make the work easier from now on. Then when Helene begins to smile brightly after finding this kind of idea, Iris claims that she will give him some gratitude for finding this idea soon enough someday. Helene thinks that he might have saved them all once again, and the protagonist feels like he was just relaying his ideas, and Iris asks him for a favor. She claims that the situation of the enemies is now weird in the neighboring country U-Boy, as there are barbarians who came to the front lines for the subjugation of the war. But the situation is getting worse because of some hidden circumstances these days. Iris claims that the situation has gotten worse recently, as even though it is public business, her sister wasn't able to come in here without any guards around her. The protagonist feels that she wants him to become the guard for her sister, as the soldier working under them are severely wounded for days. Even though the protagonist looks rather interested in being in the middle of a fight, Iris thinks that it will be fine if he becomes her guard, but he insists that he will annihilate any kind of danger. Even though the enemies are spiteful of his existence, the protagonist thinks that he will be enough without his armor and keeps on charging against the opposition. Soon enough, when the barbarians keep on charging against them, the protagonist thinks that it might be injurious and keeps on heading against them as soon as possible, asking the opposition to come at him. But it seems that the barbarians are running away from something behind him, and even before they are about to realize something, the soldiers continue to get impaled by a huge sword in the middle of the field. At that same time, a huge knight appears out of nowhere with a huge sword, which makes the protagonist wonder who he must be, and Iris explains that he is no one but the king of the barbarians who is going against them. Even though the barbarians are trying their best to get away from him, the king keeps on attacking them without even listening to them for a single moment. When the king starts hitting the ground to break through everything, the protagonist calls for the princess to be careful, and everyone around them scatters around the whole premises. The protagonist manages to take away the princess to safety, and the protagonist begins to ask her why he must have been attacking his allies out of nowhere. Iris thinks that there must be something wrong with the sword that the man is wielding right now, and remarks that he must be carrying the demon sword Eleanor, which is a cursed sword of the supreme ruler who once subjugated the whole continent. Then when he gets ready to fight the guy head-on, he asks others to get out of his way, knowing that the battle will be fierce against his opponent. When the guy finally charges at him with his sword, the protagonist tries to deflect all of the attacks made by him, only to find out that his sword has broken while parrying all of his attacks, and he ends up teleporting behind him as he ends up throwing his sword. Just the moment the barbarian king slashes directed to him in various time and fractions, the protagonist claims that he must be slow, and even before he is about to realize anything, the king's whole body begins to separate in an instant, meaning the protagonist is handling the situation pretty well. The idea of the protagonist defeating the barbarian king keeps going through everyone else's mind, and the sword wielded by the subjugation champion begins emitting some kind of dark aura after falling in front of the princess. Even though the protagonist thinks that everything will be alright, the princess begins carrying the sword in her two hands, and when the sword gains full control over her, they realize that the situation is quite unfathomable. As soon as she begins to wield the demonic sword and is being controlled by it, she holds the sword over her head, and it begins pouring monsters out of the ground, which are the undead troops who once demolished various countries throughout the continent this whole timeline. Even before they are about to prepare, the undead army keeps charging against the army led by Iris, and the desperation keeps on reflecting throughout the human soldiers who are nothing but mere ants in front of them. The protagonist feels like he is annoyed by the actions of the undead soldiers and starts smashing them as soon as possible to keep the area out of danger, only to face the princess next. As soon as the princess keeps on slashing against him, he dodges and realizes that the difference between the barbarian king and her is quite huge, but he tries to hold on to the sword to unarm her from the danger, so she is able to get back to her original state. But the moment he is about to touch the sword begins emitting a dangerous aura around him, which makes him realize that the sea is deeper than what he thinks it is. The more the emitting aura attacks him, he keeps on dodging as much as it is possible, and he realizes that the situation is worse than he thought it was. Even Iris is trying her best to mow down the undead soldiers, and she calls in everyone injured inside of the fort so they can prohibit the undead soldiers from entering it. But her own modified sister comes in to face her head-on, and the knight with the reputation of taking care of Iris comes in the middle to protect her from the impending danger. After kicking the hell out of the knight, Helene gets a grasp on her sister's throat with the miasma, But after a while, Helene begins to realize that she is hurting her own sister and begins to regain her senses, so she asks Iris to run away from her. Even though she is still half possessed by the dangerous cursed sword, she looks behind at the protagonist, claiming that he should finish her off as soon as possible since the danger is harming her people and even her own sister. Realizing that the love the princess has for her people is real, he begins pushing himself into the impending miasma, claiming that she will be okay in no time, but she has to keep her strength. Then he holds onto the miasma and slashes in the direction of the princess, while holding her hand as he unleashes the 777-fold strike at the demon sword to finish it off. Just when the slashing finishes, Helene regains her senses and Iris drops down to the ground at the same moment. As the protagonist keeps on holding on to the unconscious princess, Iris comes in to check up on her sister, assuming that she must still be in danger, while the protagonist is left to punish the undead soldiers arranging themselves around them. While he looks in the direction of the undead soldiers, the sword begins communicating with him, and it claims that now it is about to possess him. But when the sword fails to possess him, he begins uprooting its own subordinates by using it, and this whole time the sword keeps on crying out to him while calling him names. Even the protagonist begins to insult the sword back, claiming that they are too weak to own someone like him, and even though it keeps on crying in the end, all that is left is the dead subordinates and their bones. Just when he thinks that he is done with the undead soldiers and the sword, the protagonist throws it away while claiming that the spanking session is finally done, which makes the sword realize that it has failed to subjugate the mere human, and it will have to act with him obediently. When he gets back to Iris and her sister, the knight keeps getting spooked out, learning that he has managed to tame it at the end of the line. Soon enough, Helene comes in to meet him, and he seems rather tense because of her current situation, and she claims that she wants to be with him as soon as possible. Even before they are about to meet each other in a deep kiss, she gets unconscious once again, and the sword mocks her, saying that it is the side effect of being controlled by the cursed sword too long, which pressurizes the protagonist to pinch it for making cursed remarks about her. Then, when he thinks of asking about the side effects, the sword explains that she is having vicious sexual urges with him right now, and if it is not solved in the meantime, she can even die as soon as possible. When everyone begins asking him about the princess's situation to the protagonist, he claims that he will be taking care of the princess for a while, and begins the journey to take her into his mansion as soon as possible. When he finally gets back after the end of the journey, he asks Miyu to take care of the horse, and she starts asking about the woman with him out of curiosity. But when he helps the princess to lie down on the bed, she thanks him for helping her out with the sword, which was taking a huge toll on her, and he claims that he did what he had to do to keep her safe. Just when they are about to talk to each other about the sword, they kiss each other almost instantly, and they both continue to engage in their sexual urges to reveal each other's bodies to each other. When they are finally done with their hours of sexual pleasure, the princess lies down on the bed unconscious. The protagonist even punishes the sword once again, claiming that it is the one at fault for creating a hard situation like this. But the protagonist then instantly takes out the tickets that he has managed to gather, and now that he has 10 of them, he thinks that he can now visit the receptionist once again to check up on her with his prizes. The moment when he stands in front of the receptionist, she states that a girl is behind him, and he realizes that there is someone behind him, and he doesn't know her at all. Then when the girl realizes that she is now out of the sword, she begins haggling with him to ask what he has done to her, as she is not supposed to be in this kind of demeanor all of a sudden. Without thinking about her human form, she thinks that she will now be able to go against him, and she tries to attack him. But he easily manages to fend her off, remarking that she is quite annoying in the first place. She even goes on to summon her undead soldiers, but none of them seem to appear anymore, which begins to frustrate her even more, and as the protagonist keeps on ignoring her throughout the whole time, she gets even more annoyed. Just when he keeps on rolling out the tickets, the protagonist is happy to see that he is getting the 5th prize, which is the magic stone, and even the receptionist wishes her all the best as he is on his last roll. Then when she realizes that he has been doing something like this for a while, she thinks that she can do it, but she is unable to reach the height of the table ahead of him because of her smaller demeanor. Even before they are about to realize, she ends up rolling the ticket, which gets him the warp feather instantly, which feels rather uncanny to him, and the protagonist even thanks the cursed sword girl for helping him out. Then, when they are back in the new world once again, the protagonist realizes that she might not be able to access her human form in this world, claiming that she wouldn't be able to do any kind of mischief from now on, as he will be the one to hold her right now. When he reaches out to the princess, she claims that the others must be worried about her, and the protagonist instantly uses his newly gained skill warp feather to teleport to the U-Boy fort where everyone is waiting for them. Just when they get into the fort, the protagonist claims that he used his special skill to teleport to this place instantly, and the thing that makes Helene feel special is that he used his skill with her for the first time of using it. Iris comes in to remind Helene that they are in a public place and claims that she has been worrying about both of them the whole time. While both of the sisters reunite with each other, the protagonist and the knight continue to stare on the ground to wait for the farewell bidding part of the protagonist. Then, when they are about to say goodbye to the protagonist, Helene explains that she can only be with one man who will be him for the rest of her life, and the protagonist holds onto her shoulder saying that her words will be enough as he will be waiting for her. After being emotional because of the momentary situation, Helene ends up embracing him almost instantly, and just like that, Helene ends up becoming one of his women, while the knights continue to cheer for them the whole minute. In the northern forest of Roizen, the protagonist goes on to meet various adventurers around the continent, and he begins to wonder what is even happening in this place. He notices that the place is filled with various types of adventurers, and he has never seen something like this in his whole life. Even the cursed sword ghost starts asking him about his intentions to come to this kind of place, and he states that the only reason he is here is because of hearing about the monster subjugation from Salamas, as it got him curious enough to visit the place to confirm the information on his own. Soon enough, someone calls his name, and a cute girl behind him is happy to see him, and realizes that she was right to recognize him while introducing herself as Io Akos. Then, when he starts asking her about her way of knowing that it will be him in this place and no one else, she claims that she has been hearing about him from everyone for a while because of his newly gained popularity for saving the whole kingdom and even the princess. When he asks Io if she is a wizard, she claims that she is, and she is also a C-rank adventurer. She claims that the reason why she wanted to meet him is because she wants to become someone like him, as she admires him the most in the whole world. Then the protagonist shakes her hand, stating that he wants to work with her so they both can do their best. Soon enough, someone comes in to announce that the A-rank adventurer Alexis is about to announce something on behalf of everyone present on the whole ground, and when the protagonist begins to wonder if he is supposed to be someone famous, Io explains that he is the ace of the Adventurers Guild of Roizen. Alexis announces that there was a massive outbreak of monsters in the forest, and despite their unified attempts, they have been struggling to deal with the monsters, and they are about to approach them once again if they get the opportunity. While representing a girl beside him, he claims that they are about to use her sealing magic to stop the monsters if possible, and even though the level of the monsters might be not harmful, but the number of the monsters is quite impending ahead of them. When he claims that he thinks of the link between them, Alexis shows that he doesn't really come about the protagonist much, and the protagonist decides to be humble in front of someone like him. But he is excited to see how everyone is about to fight at the same time. Then, when the undead army finally approaches them, the protagonist feels rather distracted about the situation, and the whole team gets ready to subjugate the monsters at once. Io begins to use her lightning strike on the monsters coming toward them, and the protagonist gets excited to see that she is able to use this kind of magic, even though it takes a lot of time to activate. Alexis fires up his sword to attack the monsters, and while they continue to fight, the protagonist keeps on waiting with Io while standing afar from them. Just when one of them goes on to attack the protagonist, he holds the head of the monster to smash it on the ground, which gets Io quite interested in his skills, assuming that he must be awesome if he is able to do something like this. Then the protagonist begins asking the cursed sword ghost to talk about the undead, as he knows that she created something similar to the previous time, and she thinks that they might have come around from the place where she was sealed back in time. Then she claims that she had been sealed for a long time before the barbarians came to find her, and even though the protagonist thinks that she would have been able to make them vanish, she explains that she does not have control of the monsters right now. Just when the protagonist thinks that Alexis wouldn't even need his powers to win the fight, they are already enough, an earthquake shocks everyone present on the ground. Just when the sound keeps on getting closer to the adventurers, they notice that the protagonist is fighting the undead army, and some huge hand comes up to them to catch them all at once, as if they are being targeted by some huge force all at once. Just then, the protagonist thinks that the ghost sword might be able to know the figure as well. She claims that the huge monster is the faithful subordinate of her and her greatest trump card that ever lived, whose name is Sandros. When everyone is way out of their mind after seeing the monster, the ghost claims that even someone like the protagonist wouldn't be able to go against someone like him, and even though Eleanor tries to command him, it says that it is ready to finish her off while demanding to know about her location. Elena realizes that the pact between them might have broken, so he is not about to listen to him anymore, and the monster begins to attack the adventurers, including Alexis with its huge sword by dropping it on the ground one by one. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to fight alone against the monster, Alexis asks others to support him, and the whole group begins to go against the monster at once with whatever they have with them. But even after accumulating his whole strength, Alexis finds out that he is unable to even lay a strike against the monster, and the monster decides to impale him. But even when the teammates think that he is finally gone, Alexis finds it hard to believe that the protagonist ended up saving him till the end by parrying the strike. He finds it hard to believe that someone like him with a D rank is able to save him, and the protagonist asks him to stay back without talking too much, as he is ready to defeat the monster on his own. Just when the protagonist rushes against the monster, Eleanor claims that she is rather reluctant to go against the monster in front of them, but she thinks that she will have to lend her powers to him anyways in the end, so there is no way discussing it to pass the time. Even though everyone keeps trying their best to hold the monster down, adventurers keep on dying fighting against the monster from time to time because of the power gap between each other. Just when they think that it will be the end for them right now as the undead continue to approach them, the protagonist begins slashing down the monsters as fast as they can, and the protagonist states that they can calm down and back up since he will be the one to take care of it from now on. Even so, the adventurers do not back down to engage the monsters from afar, and the monster keeps throwing its strikes everywhere it can to take them all down at once, and when the dust settles in that place, the protagonist can be seen holding against him to protect everyone around him. They think that it must be something unbelievable, but he is the one who is rumored to be the hero who can save everyone as if the rumors are bright and true ahead of them. When Io hits the monster using her wand, the protagonist teleports behind him, and he claims that he will now need her strength to evacuate the injured people to safety, as he will be the one to take care of the monster, and starts departing, adding that he will continue to count on her. Just when Io claims that she will be accompanying him, a huge strike comes against both of them, and Io gets hit in the middle, which almost makes her lose consciousness by hitting the tree behind her. Even though the protagonist requests her to go back to the camp to protect herself, she claims that she wants to be like him, as she is ready to put her life on the stake to protect her comrades, and he thinks that Io is such a good girl who is ready to do everything for someone else. He ends up asking for 30 seconds from her and starts running in the direction of the monster, adding that he will be relying on her from now on. Just like that, the protagonist ends up running like a madman and begins striking against the monster with his skills, while Io keeps helping him by boosting him with her lightning magic. While she keeps on distracting the monster, he asks Alexis to hold on to him, and they end up teleporting to a safe place, while Io is barely managing against the fat bastard by using her lightning magic. Just when she thinks that she will be able to manage, she ends up getting in the middle of the undead and the huge monster, making her believe that she is about to get wrecked right now. Just in a split second, she ends up being split in half, and she keeps saying sorry to the protagonist for failing him in the end. The moment she wakes up in the end, she notices that she is fine, and the protagonist is handling her right now, just as if she had a bad dream at her end. Just when she begins worrying about everything and is about to ask him something, the protagonist claims that she should hold on to her own as he starts getting in the direction of the monster. Even so, Io insists that she wants to fight, and the protagonist claims that he will ask her to help her with the lightning magic when she is ready, and he asks Elena to get ready to clash against the forbidden beast. After fighting against the monster for a while like a champ, he asks Io to get on with her lightning skill, and when he blasts him with the lightning skills, he dives down into striking the monster in the worst way possible to make him realize what he is. At the end of the fight, the protagonist ends up getting another ticket in his hand, and when Elena begins complaining about the way of handling her, the protagonist makes her shut up as she is nothing but a pain in the ass. When Io keeps on getting close to him, she thinks that she wants to be with him from now on, and the protagonist praises her for making good magic tactics at that moment. Even after feeling the best possible moment of her life, she thinks that she needs to hold on to her feelings from now on, and the protagonist begins asking her about Isekai'd, which is a rare kind of magical crystal that will be found in the same mountain. Then the protagonist thinks that he can make some money by finding that kind of thing, and Io realizes that he is in need of some money, but she is unable to understand what he means by saying that he thinks of lottery tickets now. When he thanks her for coming in with him, she thinks that it was quite a pleasure to be with him, and when the protagonist finds one of the ores, he realizes that they look quite rare because of the unique pattern on their body. Just when she thinks that the place is supposed to be dangerous, someone rises behind them and notices that the monster behind them has a huge mouth that is easily able to swallow both of them at once. As Io is about to warn him about something, the protagonist asks her to stay back as he is about to go against the monster with his full power, which can easily blast her away from the zone if they are not careful enough. Just when he feels like he has done enough by slashing down the monster, which combines with the ores, Io shouts to her claiming that the ore is immortal, and he wouldn't be able to finish them off. The moment when the monster is about to steal his life away, she ends up using her power of lightning to blast the monster away, which is the only strength that is able to take them down. The protagonist ends up praising her and keeps on blasting lightning on the monster, and she is rather flabbergasted to see that he is no longer unable to use the magic. He claims that he is now able to cast the magic since she ended up hitting him with the same kind of magic. Just when she seems rather sad, he claims that she just has to care about mining now as she can carry as much as they want, as he will be getting them together back with his teleportation magic in the end anyway. Soon enough, both of them teleport in front of Helene, and the moment she notices that he is there in front of her, she ends up hugging him, adding that she has been missing him the whole time. Soon Io feels rather betrayed after finding out that both of them are now couples, and she introduces herself as an adventurer when Helene asks her about herself. As they begin to talk with each other, Io realizes that Helene is far more amazing than she thought that she would be, and she feels rather sad that she doesn't know anything about the protagonist. But Helene ends up noticing that Io must be sad and even whispers about her in the ears of the protagonist, and when she is ready to leave the castle, the protagonist begins following her to ask her if she has something to say to him. Then when he confronts her about it, she claims that it is nothing important, but she wants to ask him if he wants to let her join his party. But then she thinks that she is useless in the middle of the battle, and there is barely any use for her, so her mind is already changing about making the statement. Seeing that Io is losing her confidence, the protagonist claims that Alexis told him about the fact that he and his whole team would have been wiped out without them, which ends up brightening up her mood. Soon enough, the protagonist teleports her into the guild where everyone is laughing and enjoying their food for being able to subjugate the monster, and the protagonist claims that the only reason they are happy now is because she ended up working for them. He makes her realize that strength doesn't matter, but willpower and bravery do, and just when he asks her if she is ready to form a party with him, he ends up kissing her at that instant in the Hollywood style, if you ask me. Just when she claims that she wants to, you know where they end up. On the bed of the mansion, of course, and she feels rather unbelievable that she ended up mating with someone like the protagonist even though he is in love with Helene. The next day, just after arguing with Elena for a while, the maid comes in claiming that someone is here to visit him, and a beautiful woman introduces herself as Delphina Homer Lamonry, which means that the beauty is about to bring some trouble for him. Then, when the woman claims that she came with the instructions made by Helene, he thinks that she must have been sent by Helene, and she is the one wealthy merchant who is currently working with the royal family. Elena feels like it must be quite impressive for her to guess his relationship with Helene, and the woman presents him instantly with an advance payment of 2,500 silver coins in front of him in exchange for the ores that he was able to mine from the mountain, and the protagonist feels rather fine after seeing the bunch of lottery tickets in front of him. Just when the woman thinks that he must be thinking about something, he claims that he is not, and she instantly asks him about the sword that is beside him. Her whole demeanor changes almost instantly while talking about the sword, and she claims that it must be fake, and the reason why she thinks that it is fake is because no man in history was able to claim the sword but him. Then the protagonist thinks that she must be assuming that Helene was tricked by him in the end because of her young age, and she claims that he is right at guessing the whole formula beyond her scoffs. At that moment, the protagonist realizes that someone needs to teach a lesson of their life and asks why she doesn't think of holding on to the sword in the first place. But the end of it ends up making her have a huge orgasm in the protagonist's bed, and she doesn't even remember everything in the end of the night. When he explains everything to her, she thinks that she needs to reconsider her behavior from now on, and even apologizes to him for acting like that for no reason at all. As they keep on bargaining for the end of their deal of getting together once again, the protagonist realizes that she must be a good woman and throws her on the bed once again. Just like that, even if she ends up becoming the woman of the protagonist, no one would have expected that ending in their whole life. In the morning, Elena and the protagonist get ready to get to the lottery place, and when they arrive there, the receptionist greets them by saying that she is running a limited time offer as the rewards have already been replaced for a whole week with special prize lists. She even introduces the idea of loaning to him, in which he will have to return the ability at the end of the time, and he lets her hold 10 tickets for the time being, and Elena gets ready to spin once again for him. He ends up getting only the consolation prizes in the end, and he claims to Deflina that he wants to buy some land around the mansion, and it seems that he is targeting to build something inside of the mansion. It seems that he ended up preparing a huge bubble bath for all of his women, and they continue to spend money on them, and while he looks at one of his tickets, he thinks that he needs to keep earning more to keep being fulfilled at the end of the day. When Helene claims that she has to leave soon enough, the protagonist gets curious, and she explains that the barbarians are acting up once again. She even explains that there is a rise of the barbarian queen named Nanakanu, and when he finds out that the woman named Nana is quite beautiful, he instantly makes his journey toward the barbarian land with the hope of meeting her. On the other hand, Elena feels like she is being neglected without him beside her, and she ends up finding the ghost that he fought in the first place, which feels rather interesting to her. While eating his meal filled with meat, the protagonist notices that Elena looks rather grim than usual, and when the waitress comes in over, she thinks of harming her. But the protagonist ends up making her lose the chance once again by picking on her. And when the waitress begins asking about the sword, the protagonist acts like a playboy to make her laugh and cry at the same time. Just after introducing the cook of the restaurant, the waitress feels rather excited, and the protagonist feels great to see that she is the one who is cooking for all of them at once. In the end, when they are about to settle the bill, the waitress claims that Mary is now missing, and it seems that Elena is the one who took her to the mansion. She even wrote a letter for him by keeping the broomstick next to him. The protagonist instantly teleports with the waitress and teleports in front of his own mansion, and it seems that Elena is keeping Mary hostage, which makes it rather evil of Eleanor. Just when he thinks that Elena is acting like an evil one for no reason, the ghost from before reveals itself, which makes the protagonist realize why Eleanor has been acting like this for a while, as she is now under the guidance of the ghost. The protagonist asks Fiona to move away from them, and as the protagonist rushes into Mary, the sword and the ghost end up gaining full control of Mary, but even after being against the full strength of everyone, the protagonist thinks that he will be fine. Even though they would like to think that the protagonist is dead, unfortunately, is not able to make their dreams come true, as if he is just enjoying his time playing with them all at once. Even though Elena and the ghost continue to flank against them at once, he continues to teleport behind them effortlessly. But after a while, when some kind of rush of power strike is coming toward them, they keep on laughing at the protagonist's face, assuming that the mansion and the maid inside will be blasted away. He ends up using his skill of 777 in the end altogether to keep blasting away the particles on his hands, while still protecting his mansion and maid in it in the end, which makes Fiona realize that the protagonist is more than amazing. Eleanor feels like she is about to lose her mind, knowing that the protagonist is even able to control the fire magic in his hands, which feels like basic magic to the protagonist. Even though the protagonist asks her to apologize to her, she claims that she is not about to do something like that, and Mary feels like she is on the verge of collapsing already. When Elena rages against him once again, the protagonist gives Fiona the loaned ability which allows her to fight against Elena with nothing but a frying pan. Imagine losing to a frying pan-owning woman. When Fiona and the protagonist fight against Elena at once, Elena thinks that she must not be able to win against them and keeps threatening that she will finish off Mary by using her sword. Then the protagonist is forced to use his 777 multiplier, which allows the protagonist to kiss Mary as soon as possible while moving Elena out of the way. When Elena ends up getting out of the sword, the protagonist begins walking right in her direction, which makes her feel like he is about to hurt her once again, but he only pets her head to ask her why she has been doing all this. Eleanor gets the idea of venting for a while in front of her, and the protagonist expresses his thoughts about her, explaining that he is only about to do everything to wield the sword. Eleanor ends up forgiving him in the end despite the fact that he has been seducing a lot of women recently. Just when Fiona keeps on handling her sister Mary, she begins to show various reactions which the others show after wielding the sword, and she begins to feel rather hungry after that. Then when Fiona claims that she is about to cook for her because of her hunger, Mary starts to recover after a while, and the ghost of the mansion ends up disappearing forever in the end. Then the next day, the protagonist and his whole harem begin to discuss the resurgence of the barbarian army and countermeasures against them. The moment when they end up noticing a new maid among them, they keep on asking about the girl, and the protagonist explains that the girl named Tanya used to be an evil spirit in the mansion, but now she is one of the servants of Eleanor. Tanya explains that after becoming a ghost, she was unable to move outside of it, but now that Fiona, Eleanor, and Mary came in, the whole situation changed in front of her eyes. Helene explains that the barbarian army was against her kingdom's army at the U-Boy fortress on the border of Mercury, and when they were defeated by the protagonist, they continued to follow the lead of the barbarian queen next as their king now gone. Even though she sent 2,000 soldiers from the kingdom, the barbarian queen continued to smear them on the ground as if they were nothing in front of her. The barbarian queen even criticized the credibility of the kingdom's army, and she even defeated the commander on behalf of her barbarian army, which raised a serious concern. After hearing this, the protagonist thinks that he seriously wants her because her ruthlessness makes him feel like she must be quite gorgeous. Then, when the princess claims that she is ready to let him do something like this on his own, he smiles knowing that he will get into action soon enough right now, as he wouldn't be acting out without her permission. Then, when he thinks of the subjugation, the merchant woman comes in saying that she wants to contribute to their suggestions and asks if he would like to know some special information about the barbarian queen, which would be rather expensive for him. Just when at night the barbarian queen was enjoying her alone session of hot spring, the whole barbarian army kept on cheering and drinking against the commander while beating against the kingdom army who were caught along the way. The queen thinks that it must be rather careless of them to do something like this, and when she gets on to question the army general Yahello, he only asks her if she is having fun along in her hot spring, while she thinks that they should avoid the drinking party in the middle of the war. When the others notice that she is here to confront Yahello, they begin to act up against her, and she ends up cutting one of their noses to make them regret their decision. Yahello claims that she has a right to criticize them as she is the main. Even though he asks Nana to have a drink with her, she refuses the offer, and she begins to leave the premises on her own. On the other hand, the protagonist finds out that he is rather horny when he is with his women and realizes that his vigor is multiplied by 777 as well, which doesn't leave him to be in peace without satisfying his urges. Eleanor thinks that it must be rather comical that he is getting horny before a war and thinks of exercising it off for a while. But soon enough he realizes that it is not working for him at all, and he comes back to his mansion only to see the vigorous side of Helene and the others, which keeps making him feel like he needs to touch them as soon as possible. Just when everyone begins touching him, he takes all of them to the bed to satisfy himself, which ends up with all of them getting unconscious on the bed. The protagonist is happy in the morning as he was able to have fun the whole night, which eased him up a bit, and he even managed to get some lottery tickets. When everyone wakes up, he thinks of making a harem for everyone, and they think that it must have been his intention from the start. But he thinks that he wants more, and one of them has to be the barbarian queen for sure, which keeps him determined. As enemies march approaching a battle, the barbarian queen thinks that it would be a problematic reason for her to leave the front line like this, as a dispute between tribes seems quite stupid for her. Yahello thinks that the rather must be important to them, and she even says sorry to him for reacting like that the last night. He suggests that she should take some pride in that, as she is the one who kept improving their score against the enemies. Soon enough their whole battlefield gets chilly, and even snow begins to fall down, and a huge ice spike rises in the middle of the battlefield. When they realize that they are being attacked by the enemies, she asks her knights to prepare and notice that the protagonist is standing in the middle of it. They all recognize the protagonist wielding the ghost sword Eleanor, and even the queen is surprised to see that someone can wield something like that out of nowhere. When the knights begin to attack him, he uses Tanya to freeze them all at once, as she is able to hold down the normal knights on her own. But when the barbarian queen slashes down her from the middle, she begins to cry, so he asks her to get back behind himself, so he is able to protect her. Both the barbarian queen and the protagonist stand against each other, and she thinks that the man ahead of him is quite feeble and doesn't live up to his name at any cost. Just when she slashes him down once, he is able to parry the attack almost easily and starts swinging her sword against her like it is nothing. As he continues to use his sword against her while kidding, she thinks that it must be quite stupid for someone like him to deal with jokes while fighting like it is nothing. The protagonist realizes that he needs to fight her to prove himself, so he multiplies his attacks against her with the full bound attacks of 777x power to jump high above in the air. Instead of attacking her, he holds onto her shield to break it down into a hole. Realizing that her shield is no more, they continue to go against each other, which makes the protagonist realize that he surely wants more of her. Even she thinks him showing respect to her, and the protagonist claims that if he wins, she will have to become his woman, which embarrasses her in front of her barbarian knights. Just when she is thinking of targeting him, Yahello fires poison arrows directly toward them, which takes her down the worst possible way, making them both realize that he has been a backstabber this whole time. The protagonist realizes that he is the one who has been leaking information to the merchant woman Deflina and wants the barbarian queen to fight against him, so she lives no more after that. Nana realizes that her uncle never really trusted her from the beginning, and now he claims that he never regarded a woman to be their captain. Then, when he commands his knights to fight against the impending enemies, they find out that they are even being attacked in the rear for no reason, which feels like an ambush coming out of nowhere. Sensing the dangerous situation, the protagonist asks what she is about to do, and she begins attacking her own team who were approaching her to cut her down. While the barbarian knights continue to attack them in their duel, the protagonist renames her to be a good woman. The protagonist hands her over the poison-reacting pill, which is able to heal her state, and all of his other women begin to stare at them from the mountains afar. When Io deals her magic against the army down the mountains, the skill of the protagonist multiplies her attacks to create an even more powerful deal against them. Deflina at the same time gets her whip out to fight the army and starts beating the hell out of them as if they are her slaves from the get-go. Just when they think that they will be able to go against the Maid, she starts boxing against them while wearing the boxing gloves in fear as the multiplier keeps on helping her out as well. Meanwhile, Helene goes against Yahello as he thinks that they are nothing but mere women fighting against the team of men. Helene hurts his horse, which destroys his ability to go around them easily, and they begin to fight each other by holding their swords in their hands. After rebuking each other for a while, Yahello protects himself by using the corpse of one of his battalions and recognizes her to be the princess of the Mercury Kingdom. Even though he thinks that he will easily win against her, she keeps on smearing his battalions like they are nothing but ants in front of her, and she thinks that she doesn't need some protection against someone like him at all. Yahello is enraged after seeing Deflina even more, and just before he is about to attack her, Helene comes from behind and impales him all over his body, which leaves him to die alone. In a timeline of mere 5 minutes, all of them are dead, which makes Helene say that they shouldn't even misunderstood the power of women at all, which will make them pay for it.